Bom dia a todos. Os encontros dos programas públicos de hoje contam com a participação de pessoas chaves para o nosso festival, que são os nossos parceiros de residência artística. Eu não sei se todos sabem, mas uma das principais missões do Festival de Arte Contemporânea, Sesc Vídeo Brasil, é contribuir com o trânsito de artistas do eixo sul geopolítico. E eu não sei se todos sabem, mas a Mostra Panoramas do Sul, ela premia 9 dos seus artistas com prêmios em residências artísticas parceiras ao festival. Esse ano, além do Brasil, a gente tem parceiros na Polônia, no Senegal, no México, na China, nos Estados Unidos, no Líbano também. E a premiação dessa edição vai acontecer hoje à noite, às 8 horas, aqui no Teatro do Sesc Pompeia. Vocês estão todos muito convidados, onde saberemos quais são os artistas premiados. E eu queria passar logo a palavra para o nosso mediador, o artista Amilcar Packer, que já foi co-diretor do Capacete, uma instituição super importante que contribuiu fortemente com a história das residências artísticas no Brasil. Amilcar, por favor.
Alô. Obrigado, Tereza. Bom, antes de começar, eu queria dar as boas-vindas para todo mundo. Bienvenue, herzlich willkommen, bienvenidos. Queria também agradecer e parabenizar o Festival Vídeo Brasil pela iniciativa, pelo convite. Também agradecer a Solange, especialmente também a Sabrina Moura. E, basicamente, hoje a gente vai tratar desse assunto que foi formulado como Hospitalidade e políticas da mobilidade, que lida, entre outras, com o trânsito, o fluxo de produtores culturais, artistas, curadores, enfim, críticos, escritores pelo mundo, e como isso vem, de alguma maneira, informando e determinando as práticas artísticas, críticas, curatoriais, experimentais, o que seja. Então, hoje a gente vai contar com a participação da Koyo Kouoh, de Douala, da República dos Camarões, que é fundador e dirige uma iniciativa que se chama Raw Material Company. Aqui do meu lado direito, como vocês veem na plaquinha também, o Aaron César, que é dos Estados Unidos e dirige o Delphina Foundation, que é uma iniciativa baseada em Londres e que basicamente promove intercâmbio cultural entre o Oriente Médio, a África e a Inglaterra. E na ponta aqui a gente tem a Annalee Davis, que é de Barbados, que é uma artista e também trabalha numa iniciativa que chama Fresh Milk. Eu aqui, na verdade, a minha função vai oscilar entre ser um anfitrião, recebendo, apresentando, conversando, um mediador, articulando pessoas e ideias de contextos específicos, e um pouco também como um provocador, um gatilho, contextualizando algumas questões que eu acho que são fundamentais para a gente entender a hospitalidade e políticas da mobilidade. Então, para começar, vou fazer uma pequena introdução, assim como eu estava dizendo, vou fazer algumas considerações para a gente perspectivar um pouco a ideia de hospitalidade, também de políticas de mobilidade. E eu queria brevemente relembrar que as manifestações que tomaram o país em junho desse ano, que começaram aqui em São Paulo, tiveram como estopim a mobilidade urbana. E se de uma certa maneira a gente imagina que o deslocamento pelas cidades não somente dá acesso, vamos dizer, ao que a gente chama de cultura, ou as práticas artísticas, mas também se a gente pensa as cidades como um dos grandes ambientes de produção cultural aqui e no mundo, na verdade o acesso à mobilidade urbana é o acesso também aos meios de produção. Então, uma cidade que segrega a sua mobilidade é uma cidade também que segrega os meios de produção cultural e artística. E, de modo mais geral, eu acho que é fundamental entender que mobilidade não pode ser entendida ou restrita pelo mero deslocamento de corpos e objetos de um ponto para outro, pois a mobilidade constitui práticas e fenômenos extremamente variados e responde a necessidades e demandas locais, mundiais, políticas, culturais, sociais, históricas, econômicas e, por que não, relembrar também motivos religiosos. Então, digamos assim, a mobilidade ela pode se dar basicamente de duas maneiras, que seria, vamos dizer assim, por livre e espontânea vontade ou por migração forçada, deslocamento forçado. E daí a Forced Migration Online, que é uma iniciativa ligada ao Refugee Studies Center da Universidade de Oxford, estabelece que a migração forçada pode ser induzida por conflitos, pelo desenvolvimento ou sua contrapartida, o subdesenvolvimento, e ou por desastres naturais ou causados pelo homem. A organização também estabelece que, dentre os tipos, né, as tipologias de migrantes forçados, a gente pode distinguir os refugiados, aqueles que estão em busca de asilo, os internamente deslocados, que são obrigados a migrar forçadamente por guerras civis, conflitos armados e constante violação dos direitos humanos, e os deslocados pelos desastres, os migrantes contrabandeados e os migrantes traficados. Então, alguns pequenos dados, né? Então, estima-se que entre o século XVI e XVIII, o Brasil viu desembarcar pelo menos 4 milhões de escravos negros traficados do continente africano. 14 milhões é o número total estimado para as Américas. Em 2012, a United Nations Refugee Agency estimou um total de 15,4 milhões de refugiados espalhados pelo mundo. Estima-se que o número de refugiados sírios desde o começo da Guerra Civil ultrapasse 1 milhão de pessoas e aproximadamente 4 milhões tiveram que deslocar-se dentro do país. O número de migrantes forçados no Japão após o desastre de Fukushima atinge mais de 100 milhões de pessoas e cresce a cada dia. Estima-se que a cidade de Altamira, no norte do Amazonas, dobrará o seu número de habitantes devido à construção da hidrelétrica de Belo Monte. Ainda não foi avaliado o número de indígenas, quilombolas e populações ribeirinhas que serão obrigados a migrar, né, a se deslocar, em razão das mais de 130 hidrelétricas previstas para serem construídas na bacia amazônica até 2020. O número de pessoas voando ao mesmo tempo varia entre 1 e 3 milhões de pessoas. Segundo a Organização Mundial da Saúde, no ano de 2010, mais de 1 milhão e 200 pessoas morreram em acidentes de carro, sendo uma das 10 maiores causas de óbito do mundo. De uma perspectiva ambientalista, o deslocamento de passageiros por meio de veículos motorizados, motos, barcos, carros, caminhões, ônibus, veículos agrícolas e aviões é um gigantesco desastre ecológico, né? Tendo em vista não só a queima de combustíveis fósseis, mas também a produção de biocombustíveis pelas monoculturas extensivas, soja, cana-de-açúcar, milho. No dia 2 de julho deste ano, o presidente boliviano Evo Morales, que foi democraticamente eleito pelo povo boliviano, teve que desviar o curso do seu avião que viajava de Moscou para Lima, pois países como França, Itália, Espanha e Portugal lhe recusaram a permissão de sobrevoar seu território, obrigando-o a pousar em Viena, onde o avião ficou detido e foi revistado. No dia 18 de agosto deste mesmo ano, o brasileiro Davi Miranda foi detido no aeroporto de Heathrow, Inglaterra, sem qualquer motivo ou explicação. Miranda é companheiro do jornalista inglês Glenn Greenwald, que escreve para o jornal britânico The Guardian e foi um dos responsáveis pela publicação das informações de Edward Snowden sobre a espionagem do governo norte-americano. Bom, a organização Res Artist contabiliza hoje mais de 400 iniciativas cujas atividades promovem residências artísticas em mais de 70 países, mas a gente provavelmente poderia pelo menos dobrar esse número, né? É provável que nenhum programa de residência artística em todo o mundo conceda visto de trabalho para os seus residentes, restringindo assim a possibilidade da participação de agentes de certos contextos cujos países não têm leis ou relações diplomáticas com esses países. Além dessa restrição, a gente poderia imaginar que o tempo de residência dos profissionais da arte se restringe basicamente ao tempo de visto de turismo, né? Então, o tempo de pesquisa, hoje em dia, dos artistas se restringe ao visto de turismo, a não ser que você tenha algum passaporte de algum país que te permita se deslocar e fazer outras coisas. Alguns anos atrás, conversando com um artista angolano chamado Kiluange Kiarenda, ele me contava sobre um projeto seu que dizia que, curiosamente, não existia como motivo de pedido de visto o amor, e que ele achava que era fundamental fazer pressão para os países começarem a pôr lá, né, uma cruzinha, né, para você justificar o pedido de visto que eu estou indo para um outro país por amor, né? Bom, em termos de política da mobilidade, eu acredito que é preciso operar para além dos eixos tradicionais de deslocamento dos profissionais da arte, que frequentemente reproduzem os fluxos coloniais. É preciso modificar os sentidos demasiado unidirecionais desses fluxos, pois não se trata apenas de multiplicar os destinos, como fazem muito bem as agências de turismo, mas sim de desenvolver relações de reciprocidade, onde todo lugar possa se tornar também um centro de recepção, mas também de partida, né? Então, outra coisa que me vem à cabeça é pensar como a hospitalidade de nós brasileiros chamados homens cordiais se restringe também, em demasia, ao meu ver, aos antigos colonizadores, notadamente os europeus, pois a gente sabe muito bem como os brasileiros vêm tratando os bolivianos e imigrantes também, os imigrantes africanos, né? Então, que tipo de hospitalidade estamos construindo, né? Outro dado que eu queria levantar aqui para a gente é para pensar um pouco como a multiplicação dos programas de residência e iniciativas independentes no Brasil vem também sendo acompanhado de empreitadas do setor privado, residências artísticas de galerias, de colecionadores, que muitas vezes se utilizam neste tipo de formato para baratear custos de produção, venda e aquisição de obras. E, obviamente, a construção de uma imagem social, isto é, status, né? Se houve um momento onde as instituições legitimavam os artistas e as práticas para o mercado, parece que hoje em dia tem uma perspectiva reversa, né? E é o mercado, as galerias, os colecionadores que estão legitimando essas práticas e artistas para as instituições. Se de uma certa maneira, a gente estava falando, por exemplo, de imigração forçada, que muitas vezes tem um termo francês chamado déracination, que de uma certa maneira é perder suas raízes, a gente pode pensar também para o processo criativo uma outra palavra que o Deleuze e o Guattari usaram bastante, que é desterritorialização. E como a noção de desterritorialização está extremamente ligada aos processos de criação, de crítica, de experimentação. E o grande problema que a gente vem enfrentando cada vez mais é como um sistema dominante, que é o sistema do mercado neoliberal, vem capturando nesse processo de desterritorialização, territorializando as práticas, basicamente em exposições ou mercado. E como, de uma certa maneira, eu acredito ainda que essas iniciativas independentes, autônomas, autogestionadas, elas podem, de alguma maneira, funcionar como outros portos, como outros abrigos, onde funcionaria também como incubadoras de projetos, de práticas, construindo comunidades, trabalhando políticas do dia a dia e não só de questões específicas, em momentos específicos, e, enfim, colaborando extremamente para trabalhar num tecido que é muito mais intangível do que o que a gente pode ver nas instituições, vamos dizer, mais oficiais. Então, era mais ou menos isso que eu queria colocar como pano de fundo. A ideia é que nossos colaboradores aqui agora façam um pouco a apresentação um pouco das suas iniciativas, um pouco relacionando com os seus contextos, porque eu acreditamos todos de uma certa maneira que essas iniciativas elas não são modelos a serem seguidos, mas são exemplos que podem apresentar para a gente como lidar com questões históricas, sociais, culturais, locais, não só respondendo às demandas do contexto local, mas também provocando e desafiando o contexto local, também criando demandas, criando economias, políticas, práticas. Eu vou passar primeiro a palavra para a nossa querida Annalee Davis. Obrigado. Desculpa, a gente vai fazer uma apresentação de aproximadamente 20 minutos cada um, e a ideia é que depois, se a gente tiver tempo, realmente a gente torne isso numa conversa.
Thank you, Amilcar. Thank you to Video Brazil and all the wonderful people who have made my participation in this festival and panel possible. I'm honored to share the platform with my esteemed colleagues from Dakar, the UK, and Brazil. Video Brazil, I'm sure you will all agree, is the essence of hospitality. They do it so very well, and I think we're all experiencing hospitality at its finest. This is a model worth replicating, and I want to congratulate you all for the stellar job you're doing. Well done. The title of my presentation is Unrecognized Affinities. But firstly, I want to give some historical background to the place I come from. Secondly, I have been asked to speak about my work as a visual artist. And finally, to speak of my work as a creative activist in Barbados and the formation of an artist-led initiative called the Fresh Milk Art Platform, Inc., of which I'm the founding director. I live and work in Barbados, a very small island in the southern Caribbean. A colony of the British Empire since 1627, we quickly transformed into England's richest colony, providing phenomenal wealth because of the development of the sugar industry in the 17th and 18th centuries, when sugar became a commodity that quickly became known as white gold. I'm going to show 4 pieces. This work is called Uprooted. It refers to the Caribbean as a migratory region, arguably one of the first globalized spaces in the world. The whole world met in the belly of the Americas, where the model of the plantation economy was developed. My father's family arrived in Barbados from the United Kingdom in 1648. Although the majority of the population is comprised of black Barbadians, descendants of slaves imported from the west coast of Africa, we are today a diverse community comprised of white Barbadians who came originally as plantation owners, small farmers, merchants, traders, artisans, and indentured laborers from Scotland, Ireland, Wales, and England. Sephardic Jews came from Brazil to Barbados in 1654, escaping religious persecution in Dutch Brazil, bringing with them the technology and the expertise about the growing of sugarcane and its production. We have one of the oldest Jewish synagogues in the Western Hemisphere. At the turn of the 20th century, small communities arrived from Syria and Lebanon, Pakistan, and India. And more recently, a very small Chinese community is developing on the island and in the region. This piece, Uprooted, speaks to the island and the region as a migrant space, people settling down and pulling up their roots over and over again across centuries. Barbadians then migrated to work on the Panama Canal at the turn of the century, to Cuba, to Costa Rica, and to Brazil. In the 1950s, massive migration took place to the United Kingdom, Australia, the US, and Canada. And there's also been movement within the Caribbean. This work speaks to these continual shifting patterns of migration, cross-pollination, and subsequent entanglement that happens between a people always on the move. This installation is just beyond my imagination. The title of the work is adapted from the Barbados Board of Tourism's marketing slogan, Barbados Just Beyond Your Imagination. It presents the countries of the Caribbean, minus Haiti and Guyana, as sand traps locked into a sea of perfectly manicured green grass with no sign of water. The work references the ways in which the region continues to develop itself as a playground for visitors, continually transforming the physical landscape in order to maintain the stereotypical image of our island destinations as tropical, exotic paradises maintained for people from somewhere else. Sweet Island Cookie Cutters continues to speak to the way in which we package ourselves as exclusive destinations, presenting the region as a space to be consumed by the other. Portrait of a white Creole family, Barbados, circa 21st century. Now you see me, now you don't, is the title of this work. The transparency of the laser-cut acrylic portraits of my 25 immediate family members plays with the simultaneous visibility and invisibility of the profiled white Creole portrait within the context of contemporary Caribbean society. Although white Creoles are visible as a minority, they're only 3 to 5% of the population. They're also invisible since the region is seen as a homogeneous Afro-Caribbean space. The work challenges ideas about who belongs in the Caribbean, begging us to question who defines the parameters that determine belonging or non-belonging. Whiteness is a carefully constructed phenomenon that requires deconstruction and is yet to be understood in all of its complexity. So let me now transition to the birth of fresh milk. I teach at the Barbados Community College in the BFA program. Some years ago, I decided I needed to respond to the fact that none of our graduates continued making work after graduation. There is no developed creative economy that can absorb them. Fresh Milk was born to support and nurture young talent. It is called Fresh Milk because we're located on a dairy farm, and I also thought of how women turn their blood into milk to nurture their young. This is my studio space that became Fresh Milk. The network came out of a specific local need to harness the talent of our young creatives, to be a safety net, to catch artists as they fell into the real world after art school. Now, 2.5 years later, we have graduates continuing to make work because we're opening up opportunities for them. I was raised in a very hospitable household, but my parents' welcoming home reinforced the status quo in many ways. I've chosen to ground Fresh Milk's mode of hospitality in very different philosophical and political frameworks. This is our small gallery space that doubles as a lecture space, a workshop space, a residency space, a screening space. It's a very hybrid Caribbean space. Fresh Milk is located on the site of a former sugar plantation built in the mid-1600s. It now functions as a dairy farm. My home and studio are located on this farm, and I've turned my studio into Fresh Milk, effectively marginalizing myself out of my own workspace. Because of the island's brutal history rooted in indentureship and the slave trade, the physical location of Fresh Milk on a former plantation has raised concerns as to whether it is a legitimate or appropriate space to carry out its work. Historically, the plantation was an exclusive space, hospitable only to a white elite planter class who oversaw the enslavement and inhumane treatment of an indentured and enslaved population. I'm currently working on a project for an exhibition here in Brazil that speaks to this debate about the plantation as a fixed space defined perpetually by conflict and division. I'm interested in my work as an artist and an activist in mining the plantation as a site of investigation, a space which I'm unpacking from the ground up, literally digging into the soil to find ceramic remains, reading through documents, wills and deeds from the early 1800s, and thinking about the potential for transformation in this historically divided space through my work and through the programming at Fresh Milk. This transformation has a lot to do with ideas around hospitality, which originates from the word hospes, meaning guest or stranger. I'm concerned about the seeming stranger or enemy among ourselves, and within our own country, within our region and the world. We need to be hospitable to all of ourselves first. We need to work to open ourselves up and share ourselves out with the stranger in our midst through the arts, and to create safe, critical spaces for exploration, innovation, connection, excellence, and production. Fresh Milk responds to our needs at the moment in Barbados and the Caribbean. We build from within the local context. We define the Caribbean as an archipelago stretching from Cuba and the Bahamas in the north to Trinidad in the south, moving to Suriname and the Guyanas on the north coast of South America, the coastal rim of Central and South America, and out to the diasporic outpost, Amsterdam, London, Toronto, Vancouver, New York. The Caribbean is necessarily a broad, shifting, and dynamic space. What is radical about this notion of hospitality in our context is in relation to the history of plantations, which were not designed as hospitable spaces. So for Fresh Milk to transform a former plantation into a welcoming, creative, critical space is indeed a revolutionary gesture. Our programming goes against the grain of a traumatic history of abandonment and gestures to new possibilities by offering acts of hospitality rather than hostility. Instead of reading Fresh Milk's presence on the site of a former plantation as problematic, we propose an alternative suggestion. We propose an alternative, suggesting that transformation is both necessary and possible. Indeed, change must happen in a space such as this, and it is because of this very history, on this very site, that transformation is even more potent. We cannot avoid the history of the location, but we can be responsible in the present while being sensitive to the past. I think of this work as I'm doing as an artist unpacking the plantation from the ground up and contributing to a healthy cultural ecosystem through Fresh Milk as work which is altering the very chemistry of our own soil. This practice is rooted in scientific ideas around phytoremediation. Phytoremediation is the removal of toxins from the earth by planting plants whose roots have the capacity to extract the toxins from the soil, thereby allowing the soil to be rejuvenated and to grow something again. I believe that we have the ability and the responsibility to alter the very chemistry of our own soil, to go against the grain of history, to nurture cultural production and cultural producers through programming, through building relations with other human beings. Being hospitable in the historical context of the Caribbean is a radical gesture because to nurture one another, to consciously reject what we were taught by the colonial past and a consumer-oriented present, to choose to convert these historical spaces of abuse, torture, and neglect into sanctuaries that revel in the creative imagination, to take care of and look after the emerging talent. These are all revolutionary gestures. I believe in the capacity we all have as human beings to envision and manifest alternate possibilities through the forging of relationships with other human beings that offer something beyond perpetual conflict. The building of a reading room, for example, freely accessible to everyone, is a critical gesture in a place where people do not read books. This is in part because of its location on the premises of a former plantation, where bars for the consumption of rum, which we invented and produce and sell, were more common than libraries. Instead of using rum to numb ourselves to a hell on earth that was indentureship and slavery, let us use books to open our minds, inspire our intellect, and develop new modes of thinking. This is a project we did, sending in a couple of young artists to Casa Tomada in September to engage in a mentorship program with people here in São Paulo, a collaborative project that came out of working with Teresa at Video Brazil and Taina Azeredo at Casa Tomada. It's a project we've just done supporting 10 artists from the French, Spanish, Dutch, and English region at a residency in Aruba. We've recently launched a virtual online map which challenges the ways in which the colonial powers segmented the region linguistically and created this colonial device to make us think that we're separate in the region, one from the other. This is a myth and one I denounce categorically. The building of this map reinforces connections across linguistic divisions in the region, insisting that we are indeed connected. So when you go to the website, Fresh Milk Barbados, you can search all of the art spaces from the 19th century until now. And you can search linguistically. You can search for the French, Spanish, Dutch, English. You can search for museums, institutions, informal networks, tertiary level spaces, and publications. So what this map does is it reinforces connection. It creates the possibility for research and scholarship, and it builds collaboration through this knowledge. We are not a blank slate. It's not like nothing has ever happened there. There's a lot happening in the Caribbean. And when you click, it opens up to a little bit about each space with a few images to give some information. Isabella. I wanted to show you a 1-minute video just to see, so you could see a little bit of what Fresh Milk looks like from our last event that was held a couple of weeks ago with a New York-based performance artist who did a 6-month off-site residency with us, interviewing artists from New York and the Caribbean, and then she came to do a residency. So I'll show you that. That's our new gallery space. So we just launched our new gallery space, which is a billboard in a field of cows. And it's on a road that traverses the traffic. So that's what you, as they say, if you don't have a horse, you ride a cow. Literally, it's what we're doing. To conclude, the longer time I spend on planet Earth, I understand that the most important thing in life is the human connection. Connecting with each other is a basic biological need, more critical than anything else. Fresh Milk is building connections with other human beings through residencies, the reading room, the online map, the programming, contributing to our goal of transformation, all the while believing that we can alter the chemistry of our own soil, create new paradigms of thinking and behaving, engaging in hospitable acts, or dare I say, loving each other, the most radical gesture of all. I close with a quote from the author Theodore Zeldin, which inspires what we do at Fresh Milk. Quote, "The meeting of ideas which have never come together before, the art of making life meaningful and beautiful, which involves finding connections between what seems to have no connection, linking people and place, desires and memories, discovering unrecognized affinities between humans, holds out the prospect of reconciliation and adventure which have so far seemed impossible." End of quote. Thank you, Video Brazil and all of its workers. Thank you to each of you here that I have met and with whom I've spoken, for opening yourselves up and sharing yourselves out with me, for feeding me with your words, your ideas, and offering your hospitality to me, a virtual stranger. My cup runneth over with gratitude. I am so happy to have been a part of this radical gesture that is Video Brazil. In turn, I welcome you all to Fresh Milk and to Barbados. I thank you.
Thank you, Annalee. Now we're going to move for Aaron Cesar presentation of Delfina Foundation.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Aaron Cesar, as Amilcar just introduced, and I'm really happy to follow, actually, Annalee. I'm really inspired by looking at the model of Fresh Milk, and also inspired by being here with all of you today. I think if we're going to talk about hospitality, this is like the most fitting context to be exploring that after the last few days of being hosted in such immense kind of warmth and generosity as we've had with Video Brazil. So I'm going to present today on Delfina Foundation, which is an organization I helped to found 6 years ago. I'll show some images later, so for now you only have me to look at, so I hope you can focus. I like to describe Delfina Foundation as a laboratory space for creative exchange and experimentation. The core of our work is our residency program for artists, curators, and writers. And when I say core, I mean everything we initiate, commissions, events, collaborations, community projects, they all stem from our residency program. We're not a gallery with a residency program. We're a residency program with a gallery space. As a result, we're research focused, and resident artists and curators are very much central to all that we do at Delfina Foundation. We're located in London in 2 domestic houses. Thus, the notion of hospitality is also central to our work, from hosting cultural practitioners for residencies or the general public for events and activities. We try to maintain a sense of intimacy in all that we do, and we strongly feel that it's the personal engagement rather than the professional engagement that's of utmost importance in the context of a residency program. This means that cooking and eating has, for example, become very important in terms of exchanging and sharing ideas. We're currently expanding our space in London to double in size, which means that we'll be able to host 6 to 8 artists, curators, or writers at any one time. We will be London's largest international residency program when we reopen in January, and we have carefully redesigned the space to think about conviviality, to consider the entire house as a studio, from the kitchen to the gallery space. And speaking of the kitchen, we've redesigned the kitchen to actually incorporate an event space just next to it, so that an extension of the cooking and eating forms its way into thinking about artistic practice and process. For the last 6 years, as Amilcar said earlier, Delfina Foundation has been focused exclusively on artistic exchange with the Middle East and North Africa. When Delfina Foundation was established, our founders felt the strong need to support artistic development in the Middle East, since relations were still tense post-September 11th. In the media, there was still a lot of divisive language between which discussed them in the context of the Middle East and us, in the context of the West. I should point out that our founder, Delfina, it's a woman, her surname is Entre Canales. She's been supporting and initiating residencies for the last 20 years before Delfina Foundation through another space called Delfina Studios, which was renowned for the number of artists that went on to have critical success. And like Fresh Milk, it supported artists at the very early stage of their career. And for example, many of them have gone on to have huge success. I mean, William Kentrid's in the Pinacoteca now. He was supported at Delfina Studios many, many years ago, for example. Although Delfina Studios worked internationally, many artists from the Middle East and North Africa were also supported. So when I set up Delfina Foundation, I had a history and connections to build on. Yet and still, when an organization claims a regional focus, and particularly a focus on the Middle East, it raises a lot of issues and suspicion too, when that organization is particularly coming from the West, and in our case, the UK, which has had a historic role in the politics of the region, as well as most recent events like the invasion of Iraq. Also, like the concept of the geopolitical South, the Middle East and North Africa is a very large and a very complex place, culturally, economically, politically. There are art scenes that are more developed than others. There are art scenes that are emerging only now. There are places that have a lot of artistic freedom. There are places that have very little kind of artistic freedom. And then there's a question of Turkey, Iran, and Israel. Where do they fit in the context of the Middle East? The main difference with us was that we were not planning to parachute in. We had this history before. We were not looking to collect art. We are non-commercial. We are focused on developing practices that needed support. So we didn't only work with artists who were already established, but we were also working to work with emerging artists and to help support kind of more artists to be part of the global kind of circuit, as it were. I have to point out, though, that in the first year of our operation, 2007, 2008, was when the hype around the Middle Eastern art was at one of its highest points. Farhad Mashiri, who's an artist from Iran, who also happens to be one of Delfina Studios' former resident artists, had just broken the $1 million mark at an auction at Christie's in Dubai. The Gulf Art Fair, which is now known as Art Dubai, had just launched. Major institutions like Tate Modern were beginning to develop Middle East acquisitions groups funded by patrons from the region. The Louvre and the Guggenheim had developed partnerships with Abu Dhabi. The Marrakesh Biennial was finding its feet. The Sharjah Biennial was reaffirming itself as an international contender. Qatar, meanwhile, was carefully plotting its own takeover, which has seen itself rise to the top of the Power 100 list for art review, which is only released last month. So it was a time of great potential, but also a time of great speculation for gallerists hoping to populate new museums that are rising in the Gulf, for Uber curators who are looking for the next hot, exotic young thing, or museums in the West who are looking to finally address gaps in their collections from this overlooked region. And in the meantime, gain some new patrons for their new wings and empires. So all of these developments are very relevant to why Delfina Foundation initially focused on the Middle East, because in and amongst this context and all of this speculation, our trustees and our founder recognized that artists were being perhaps given the wrong messages about the art market being the only place to validate one's work, especially since the young market there deterred experimentation or taking risks or taking time out to further develop one's practice. As a result, many artists felt isolated. And this was not only from the art market, but they also felt isolated from each other and the international art scene, because the backlash of September 11th meant that visas were very difficult to secure. And as has been the case for many, many years, visas to travel among the Middle East and North Africa are very difficult. So it makes actually events like Video Brazil and other biennials very important, because otherwise Lebanese artists will never meet kind of Palestinian artists in the region itself. Another reason that we weren't looked to as a suspicious kind of organization was because we weren't looking to gain funding from the Middle East, from the oil barons, from the sheikhs. We are in a very unique position at Delfina Foundation because we have one main patron who supports 50% of our budget. Therefore, a majority of our operational costs are covered by one person. It makes us, it's a precarious position in one way, but it's also uplifting in another because we have some autonomy. Or I like to say that we're independent, but we can choose our dependencies as a result of just seeking out programmatic funding rather than operational support. But like many of my colleagues at this table, we still have the question around sustainability and also how we fit into the ecosystem of the arts, where there's often this very strong line between the commercial and the non-commercial, but it's becoming blurrier and blurrier, more fuzzy as time goes on, and maybe we should actually look to how we toe that line much more to develop more sustainability for ourselves, particularly when we're nurturing the talent that's going on to sell for millions of dollars in an auction. Although we're based in the UK and we have an arts council, I'd just like to point out that, in the North, there is, of course, there has been this economic crisis, which has meant that arts councils and their budgets have shrunk increasingly. And as a result, international funding has been cut, first and foremost, and then everything else. And I'll get back to that in a minute about how that actually makes an impact even on wider immigration policies, since we're talking about mobility today. In any case, a lot of our funding comes from private sources and foundations, and also partnerships, which are very central to all the work that we do. And at Delfina Foundation, we've really put partnerships at the center of all of our work, and we work with organizations like the Serpentine Gallery, to Video Brazil and Casa Tamara, to provide wider opportunities for artists. For us, it wasn't about creating a ghetto for the Middle East and London. It was about actually creating conduits for artists to gain much greater and larger platforms for their work. And also to work in collaboration with institutions in the region or in other parts of the world. And so we've also had residencies and hosted residencies, I should say, in 10 other cities, from Sao Paulo to Ramallah. And we've also created residencies where they didn't exist, like in the case of Northern Iraq in Halabja, where we worked with local families and an art center to create a residency for an artist. Or in Dubai, where all the resources existed, just not the expertise about how to facilitate and host a residency. The second part of our work is our public programs, which is about developing opportunities for artists to have career-defining commissions, exhibitions, and kind of public platforms for their work. And again, we've worked in partnership with major institutions like the Whitechapel, the Chisenhale Gallery, or Frieze Art Fair to co-present and co-commission work by artists. Therefore, our residency program has been about incubating creative practices and also providing an international platform for them. But I'm always, I should say, hesitant about using the word cultural exchange too much, because it's a term that's touted a lot in the arts, but it's completely loaded. It has become one of those buzzwords like sustainability, capacity building, access, and diversity, and it's been cited by politicians and artists alike as generally a very good thing. But at some point, culture exchange can become more harm than good, particularly when you think about issues around kind of visas. If you think about fear of foreign intervention in places like the Middle East right now, or if you think about the rampant fear of immigration in Europe, which has meant that there's been a much greater crackdown on visas across the board. So I often wonder what's gained and what's lost when you talk about cultural exchange, particularly when organizations like us, because we're small, can become co-opted by funders' agendas, and residencies and exhibitions being used as a way to paper over diplomatic cracks and ideological tensions between two nations. And we've also questioned whether the starting point for cultural exchange needs to be about differences and whether it can be about similarities. So one of the major shifts that we're having, or that we're creating at Delfina Foundation as we reopen, is to rethink our residencies being based more around practice rather than place. And breaking up the year into seasons, where we look at a theme or a question each season, and we bring together artists and practitioners from the Middle East, but also from other parts of the world, around these central questions or ideas. And next year, we're looking at two specific themes. One is the politics of food, and the other is public space, both of which relate to conviviality, to hospitality, and to some issue in regards to mobility. Speaking of mobility, I wanted to kind of stop for a second and use the second half of my presentation to, we're going out here, yeah. I'm just right now ready for my images as well, is to speak about when mobility and cultural exchange is actually tackled by an artist. So therefore, when they become at the background of a project rather than the forefront as to why a project has been put in place according to funders' agendas. And one example I wanted to raise is a project called The Silent University, which is a project by